Hey guys, welcome to Coptic Topic.
I'm Maurice.
And I'm Maria, and today we're here with...
I'm Rachel.
Elinoura.
Rachel and Nora, do y'all want to give us a little background about yourself?
Well, I'm a student at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm a philosophy and religious studies major.
I am a therapist. I'm a licensed clinical mental health therapist, and I own my own practice called Salt and Light Christian Counseling Services.
Perfect.
Thank you. Before we get started, I like to preface these are all opinions.
Yes. I'm going to start off with Rachel. I have a question. What is mental health?
So mental health is basically it's mental wellness, emotional wellness, and social wellness. So it kind of just encompasses all of those different things. And obviously in the mental, the emotional, and the social, there's subcategories, if you will. But that's pretty much the umbrella term for what mental health is.
I've never heard of the social categories. Have you?
Yeah, no.
Well, if you really
The subcategories. I said social categories, but yeah.
Connected the dots.
Okay.
well, if you really think about it, like our everything that we do kind of is intertwined, right? So like our mental health, emotional health, and then our social health kind of go hand in hand. Like if you're not having the best of days, sometimes you don't want to be around a lot of people, right? So that's socially, and we're social beings, as just how God created us. So we're meant to be with other people. So it is all kind of interconnected.
Yeah. I have another question for you.
Sure.
What kind of patients, like, what's the most common illness that you see?
Sure. So I call them clients because I'm not a doctor. So I don't want to be presumptuous and saying like, oh yeah, these are my patients. But typically I don't take anybody that has like a severe mental health issue like schizophrenia or psychosis or anything like that. While I've seen that in the past, I would refer out. But typically it's anxiety, depression, life transitions. So like young people going to college, people getting divorced or getting married. So things like that. And it's really just a lot of, I guess, those social subcategories, if you will, of anxiety, which also kind of intertwines with everything else. But yeah, so basically anxiety and depression.
What causes those? Like, I know I only ever took psychology at an AP level, not even in college or anything like that.
Yeah,
but we
same.
were just told that anxiety is caused by low serotonin, so is depression. Is that true? Like, is there more to that?
Yeah. So it's caused by low serotonin, but what does that come from? Like,
why do you just have low serotonin?
It's low serotonin, but why do you have low serotonin?
So I honestly don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. But on the broader level, it's caused by a lot of different things, right? There are honestly even some studies that would say that that's not even a thing, like the low serotonin levels or,
Dang, I got tested on that. They made sure I know that.
But there are studies that would even kind of disprove that, but it's really just dependent, I guess, on where you look. But anything can cause having anxiety. Everybody has a base level of anxiety. It's so an anxiety disorder, which is what people would be diagnosed with, is the excessive fear or the excessive worry that is overtaking your life, right? Like you're not able to function on a daily basis, or you can't get out of bed, things like that. But anxiety and depression are so loosely used now. And so many people are like, oh, I have anxiety or I have depression. And oftentimes when you really come down to it, there are other factors that are contributing to symptoms of anxiety, but that aren't actually an anxiety or depressive disorder. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was going to say, interesting that you said that, like, studies don't show that, because I got diagnosed with severe anxiety. And they put me on a bunch of medication, and all of it was because I had low serotonin, but no one said that it was because of like, no one said anything about like the research behind it. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Did it help you, or has it made things worse or better?
So I feel like if you find the right counselor, it is good. But if you just take their word, it brings you down the wrong path. Because I was being given medications to help the symptoms rather than like the root of the problem.
Yes.
And it just took me a long time to understand that that's just how the medical field is, and that's how we deal with our problems. We just throw medicine at it rather than like dealing with like the issue or the root.
Yes.
Yeah. They be prescribing anything these days. It's like I was talking to
Not too much on the pharmacist.
No, but I'm saying like sometimes they just be prescribing. Like I heard about this one girl that was like on steroids or something. This is completely different, but it's like the doctor just kept prescribing, and it was like, oh, like the doctor was like, oh, if you want more, I'll come back, I'll give you some. So she was just like, okay, like that's kind of weird. So
Yeah, that unfortunately happens way too often. So psychiatrists, their jobs are to manage medicine, right? So in my program, actually in grad school, there was a very big emphasis on diagnosing. So we took a class on it, and then in every class, it was diagnosis. So there was an emphasis on it. And then when I got into like the counseling world, it was like, oh, this person has ADHD is another one that everybody has all of a sudden. And then ADHD medication they're highly addictive. They're like narcotics, and they give them to like 5-year-old kids because it's, oh, well, this boy is overactive. Other than like looking at like, okay, he's a boy. They're 5. They're not meant to like sit still all day long. So it's so many things, but the medication is often just a bandage solution. I've had so many clients come to me and say like, I've been put on all of these medications and they're just not working. I had one client even tell me like, I feel like a lab rat. Like they just keep giving me medications that aren't working. And then oftentimes it's causing symptoms of depression, and then the symptoms of depression of like suicidality. And that is such like the suicide rates are so high. And a lot of times people don't really recognize that medication can cause people to have suicidal ideation and even act on it. So that's very scary. So to your point, finding the right counselor is so important. And I would even take it a step further. If anybody is in need of counseling, I would highly suggest finding a Christian counselor, somebody that's going to align with your values and your morals. And then a step further from that is finding a holistic counselor. So I actually emphasize like holistic counseling because I try to go to
what does that mean? We both looked at each other.
so I try to go to the root cause. I don't like people will tell me like I've been diagnosed with depression, I've been diagnosed with X, right? And I always jump into like, okay, like let's talk about your background. What's actually happening? Oftentimes, like I have some college students where they'll tell me that, you know, I've been diagnosed with ADHD or generalized anxiety disorder or whatever the case is. And then oftentimes it's really just looking at their lives, what's happening in that moment. And then, oh, well, during break, I don't feel as bad. Or when, you know, I'm in a regular routine, I don't really have these other symptoms. So if that's the case, then you don't meet the criteria for the diagnosis that you were actually diagnosed initially with. So it's really important to look at a person as a whole, so holistically, and then also look at like, you know, what are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you drinking water? These can actually cause anxiety. I oftentimes tell clients like, let's look at we have to learn to turn off the like the anxious thought and the anxious, which will lead to the anxious feeling, and look at what's happening in the moment. Like, okay, am I thirsty? Did I eat today? Am I tired? Do I have to go to the bathroom? Honestly, because that can kind of cause anxiety. Have you ever held your you know,
Bladder?
go to the bathroom, right? Like all day long? Like it's not a fun feeling, and it can kind of trickle into other areas. So it's just really important to kind of, I know, and it's hard, but it's hard. It's important to find the right fit for you, and then to ask questions. Like if you don't agree with what your therapist is saying or what, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't agree with that because you're not in my life on a daily basis. So I'm giving you symptoms of my overall outlook on like big ticket items. You're not looking at each individual piece of my life. You're not walking in my life with me. And so again, just bandage solution, just, you know, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because at the end of the day, you're hiring this person and you can fire them at will.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, I don't have a therapist, but from what people have said, it's like they'll say their symptoms and what they're feeling, but the therapist makes it seem like it's smaller than it actually is. So it's just like, oh, you're probably just stressed. I don't want to say therapist. That's kind of pushy. But like when they're talking with their doctor in those like monthly meetings. Wait, are they monthly? I don't know. But when they're in those meetings that you have to attend, it's always like, oh, you're probably just stressed from school and stuff like that. But they don't take it seriously to the point like, let's work on declining.
I was gonna say, when I got diagnosed with my anxiety disorder, so you go to see a doctor, you tell them your symptoms, and then that doctor is really not a therapist. They don't have anything to do with it. Just they either prescribe you medicine and they tell you what your path should be. And so I went to her, but I just had a bad reaction with my medication. And she just would not believe me because the percentage of people who have a bad reaction to that medication is like very low. And she just refused to understand that I was part of that low percentage. And then when I went to what they called a therapist, she,
What
she
they
was
called
what
it?
do you mean? She was an interesting lady. Not trying to be rude or anything, but it feels a little hard to be a minority and tell a white lady about my problems, and she does not understand anything. I just had a hard time with her little scarf situation, and she came up so preppy, like, and happy, and it's like, that's not
Like you're in the wrong field.
yeah, like,
I'm not feeling that way.
no. And then it was like my anxiety problem has been for a really long time, but she just kept blaming it on the fact that I got rejected from Duke. Like, I was like, I swear I've gone to 11 other schools. Like, I don't need Duke. And she's like, no. How do you feel about getting rejected from Duke? How does your mom feel about getting rejected from Duke? And she went down the family, and I was like, I swear. Yeah, okay, Steve.
I'd fire
And in
them.
the
I'd be like,
back-
I can't do this. Just walk out, leave. No, I feel that's what I'm talking about. It's like I'm telling you the issue. Why are you telling me that's not the issue?
Yeah.
Is that like common? Like, I know you have your own business, but at any point in time did you work with other therapists?
So yeah, so I did work at another practice, and a lot of the people were fantastic, and it was some of the feedback though that I've gotten from current and past clients were very similar. Like, oh, my therapist insisted that it was this. You mentioned your mom. There's also this thing lately where therapists will tell you that all of your problems are because of your mom, your parents, but your mom specifically. And then
issues.
it's like it used to be daddy issues, now it's mommy issues. And it's like, oh, you have to set these boundaries with your mom. And but what these boundaries turn into is this, I call them toxic boundaries, because boundaries are healthy and they're important if done in a right way. But like, oh no, just completely cut off anybody that has, done you any wrong. That's just not okay. But you made a really good point. Like it comes back down to finding the right fit. We are minorities, and so finding somebody that's not actually, I took a class about cultural competence, like, and it's actually in our ethics, in the ACA Code of Ethics, the American Counseling Association Code of Ethics, that you must be culturally competent to counsel anybody. I can't see somebody in the white population or Asian population or black population if I can't relate to you or understand where you're coming from. Like, God forbid if I led you down the wrong path, and it has nothing, because that's also a thing too. People will diagnose you, like, we are Christian, right? In our religion, we have a lot of like saint stories and miracles that happen. If you told somebody that wasn't culturally competent, like I had like a vision from God, like Christ himself told me, X, Y, and Z to follow this path, they might say, oh, she has symptoms of schizophrenia, and then now we're gonna put you in the category of being schizophrenic, and now you have to be on this medication or in a mental institution. And that's just not, no, like that's just not right.
Wait, are you saying you can see them or can't?
Sorry.
Like the clients that you like don't like relate to, you saying you can or can't?
So you can say like, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. So I actually tell every new client that I get, every single one, meet with me 3 times, see how you like me, see how, because it's not a personal thing. Like, if you don't want to see me, I do not take that personal, because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about the therapist. It's about you coming to seek help for your issues, your concerns. So I tell people, see me 3 times. You can check out my style. I don't wear a scarf. I literally wear pajama bottoms and like a t-shirt with like I don't know, band name, or like my like Avatar Last Airbender or whatever. Like, I'm wearing something that's comfortable because I want to relate to the people. I want to show them like, I'm one of you. At the end of the day, like, I'm just a person. I just have a little bit more experience than you in this particular field. So I want you to be comfortable, and I want you to be able to come and not feel judged and not feel like this lady has no idea what she's talking about. And if I don't, like you asked me a question earlier, I don't know. I'm gonna tell you straight up. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's, but yeah, I have told people, like, I don't think this is the right fit for you. Let me help you. I can refer you to somebody that might be a better fit.
Okay, I have a question. Do you know by any chance like the statistics on like how prominent mental health is in the Coptic community as opposed to like just the regular like community in America?
So that's hard to tell, because in order to have that statistic, you would have to have people come up and say like there's a mental health issue in the Coptic church or in the Coptic community, right? It's been a very big stigma in our culture. It's been something that's like, no, we just need God and that's it. But if you were sick, if you were physically sick, you would go to a doctor. If you needed dental work, you would go to a dentist, right? So it's only been, I think, in the last, let's say 5 years, because I really don't know, but like, let's say in the last 5 years, there's been really a more openness towards mental health in our community, because I think people like you guys, like young people, are coming up and saying like, no, we need help. Like, we need to talk about these very prevalent topics, because it's not just the American people that have mental health issues or anxiety. Like there's trauma in the Coptic church, right? Like there's trauma, 1 out of every 5 people, I would say. Actually, there is a statistic. There's a stat that says like 1 in every 4 people have experienced a trauma of some sort. So are we not included in that, right?
Yeah.
But to ask for a specific statistic, I don't know that. There would have to be more, I think, research and actual open conversation about that.
I want to like add on to what you were saying about it being open. I feel like growing up in the church, like in like the Sunday school lessons, when they started talking about personal matters, it would never be mental health. Like it was maybe up until high school.
I don't think I've
we
ever,
didn't have a
I don't
lesson
think I've
about
ever had a lesson.
we
Can
might
you
have had
remember?
one like in high school, but like what about middle school? I feel like a lot of mental health issues start to develop while you're in middle school because your hormones are
Yeah.
changing. And so it's like not as common to have those conversations, and I feel like that's also why the stats can't really.
I don't know. I had like an opposite experience. So I'm very like persistent about the whole like every Abuna has their own
Yeah.
school of thought. So I confided in one of the priests, and I like talked to him about like how I was feeling, and he was the one who actually like told me that I should go see a doctor, because there's nothing in the Bible that says you can't seek help. Actually, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
They say that you should seek help. I mean, it literally says it there. So I don't know. I got that experience, but then I also know that I've gone to other priests who are like, no, well, actually, this is wrong. You need to seek God and pray. And these like thoughts are actually like sinful. Like you should, like, if it's not, dealt with, then it could lead to worse things or whatever. So it's just like, I don't know. Maybe we haven't had like a session on it at church, but
Yeah.
like it also just depends on your priest and like how they approach it.
Yeah, in the Bible, there's so many characters that like actually do have mental health. Like so many, like Elijah, David, Job, because of what he faced. Not Elijah, David, King David, his whole like, you can like his whole like feelings are written out in a book, and
The
he had like
Psalms.
he had like severe depression, and then there was times where there was times where a lot of the Bible characters like wanted to like be dead. They were like, God, I can't do this anymore. Jonah,
Elijah.
Job, like a lot of them dealt with mental health, and you could tell like in the Bible, like I feel like King David is one of the characters where we know most about him because of like all the
Psalms.
yeah, all the Psalms. There we go. I was trying to find the book. I was like, hello. Yeah, but all the Psalms, like that whole the whole book is like, it's like written by David, and you could tell like what he's feeling and everything. So
But the difference is though, it was written in his anguish and in his, and not all of it though, because some of it is in his joy as well. But at the end of it, it was all, his hope was in God.
Yeah.
And he knew that was his salvation. And then even, I mean, Christ himself felt anguish in the spirit, right? Like, so it's relevant. Yes.
I think also sorry to interrupt you,
please.
but I was gonna say like Proverbs has a lot of verses about how it's important to seek counsel, but also sorry, I keep getting yelled at about this mic thing. But like seeking counsel is like very important, but like not forgetting his word, and like it's not a bad thing to ask for help. It's actually more admirable, in my opinion, to seek help, but just not forgetting your background and like what you've been taught and your values is like very important too. So yeah.
I feel like at times when I'm extra nervous or anxious about anything, I'm like mad at myself. I'm like, I shouldn't be anxious. Like I know I shouldn't be worrying and stuff. But then like I refer myself back to those like the people in the Bible because it's like they felt it too. There's nothing wrong with feeling it. It's when it becomes like it takes over your mind. Like, oh, God's not in control when in reality he is. Like you just got to bring it to him. And I feel like those Bible characters really just like help me personally, at least through like every situation. If I'm anxious, if I'm nervous, if I'm feeling excessively upset about something, I go back to those Bible characters. And I don't know, I feel like in Sunday school it's just not brought up as much. And so like before I started reading the Bible myself, like when I was younger, I mean like I'd read them but not like the way I would now. Before it would just be like, oh, okay, I read the story, not really seeing the connection here with me. Like I just read it, nice story, okay, like no connection whatsoever. And I feel like since Sunday school didn't really make that connection for me, a big period of my life was just, oh, I'm not allowed to be anxious. I'm not allowed to be sad. Like I just need to figure it out. I need to be happy all the time. And it got annoying in middle school because like I could not let myself be upset.
Yeah,
Like, I just had to be happy.
I feel like we all get to the point where it's like the anxiety like comes. It's not like I know like okay, so people have it worse than others obviously, but I feel like all of us get to a point where we're anxious. Like college applications and stuff, that was a mess. Like it was really bad. But yeah, like I remember me and Maria would like send each other like verses. We were like, okay, calm down, like it's fine. Like during admissions, it was bad. Like I was a mess. And opening every single one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I feel like we all get to a point where it's just like
Yeah. No, everybody said senior year would be great. It would be a breeze. Yeah, the second half, I was dying the first half.
I think I was great my senior year because one, all my classes were online. So I was just like, I would wake up, then go back to bed while my classes are running. I had checked out literally junior year.
I made myself do a full schedule. I don't know why.
mine is really,
Just
really
to
empty.
top it off.
Mine is really, really empty.
Would you like to share your schedule?
I have one class.
Giving
one class.
It's so hard to have conversations with her outside of like school and stuff. She's like, oh my gosh, I have so much homework. Shut up. No, you know.
Sorry.
Am I allowed to say that? Stop uttering words.
I'm like laughing through the pain because it was because during that time period I was like being put on the medication. So I actually was falling asleep because of the medication. Like,
Oh.
well, if you just say that, like,
Trial and error. Idiots.
right? Oh my gosh. But yeah, I actually, so during that time period, because I was just like so numb to like most of my feelings, I did not care that I got into school. Like I literally, when I got into Chapel Hill, which is, I'm not sitting here like, oh my gosh, I got into it. No, but like,
No, you got to travel. You
You
did
gotta
that.
flex
You did
that. Because I would.
no, but like when I got in, I remember, I was taking a nap actually, and then I got a call from Jerome, and he was like, "Hey, the application."
Well, I'm gonna share ours next, but go.
Oh
go.
yeah, he was
I
like,
love admission stories. They're so funny.
yeah, he was like, you, like admissions has come out or whatever, and I was like, oh really? And he was like, yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. So I opened it up, and he was like working, and then I was like, I got in. He was like, I got in. I was like, okay. Have a great day. And I went back to bed. And when my mom came back from work, I was like, oh, by the way, I got into Chapel Hill. She's like, oh, good.
We're opposites.
Bro, ours, Chapel Hill, and the school we're going to came out the exact same day, right? So it was already like crazy. No, they I don't
They're
know why they did that
cold.
to us. One of them came out at like what 4 p.m. or
Yeah.
3 p.m. and the other one came out right
Like
after.
6.
Yeah. Okay, so like literally asked Maria. She asked me to go open mine. I like disappeared for like 40
Yes.
minutes.
I'm like dying. I'm like, it says you have a decision. I'm just like, okay, she needs to get up and she won't wake up. And I'm like,
Yeah, I was taking a nap. Also, I was out. No, I was taking a nap. But Yeah, that's like a horrible way to wake someone up. When she calls me, she's like, Maurice, oh, like, get up. Like, admissions came out. I'm like,
I think
what
like I
the
called
heck?
your mom to go wake you up or
No.
something. Like I almost did. I was like, guys, where is she?
No, but I get up, and then I was like, okay, did you open yours? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, let me go open it. So I like go, but I'm like, wait, let me pray before I open this thing. I like disappear for like 40 minutes. I'm praying, I'm reading the Psalms, I'm reading a whole hour of the Agbeya. I'm like gone. Like, what is like a hello? Are you there? No, my
whole
phone's on. Do not
family
dis-
is sitting there waiting.
Yeah, they're
like,
at
let me
dinner.
know.
They're at dinner. My
Yeah.
phone's on do not disturb, right? So I open I finished the prayer and everything. I opened the letter. I got in, right? And then I call her, right? I'm sobbing, right? Her whole face, she gets on FaceTime. I'm sobbing, right? She goes and shows the camera to every one of her family members. I'm just like crying and I'm like, I
That
got
didn't happen.
And
She's
then,
lying.
girl.
But did
And
that
then
help you?
What?
Like, through the anxiety of it?
What?
Like the praying and the
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
about that too.
very, very much. Like
Ask
it was so. No, but yeah, so she's turning around the phone to everyone. They just see me sobbing, but I'm like, they're like, oh, congrats, I got it. So
I just keep looking over at Marvy and she's like knocked out.
that's what my nap was like before admissions.
Oh yeah,
class.
like the
When
Yeah.
when UNC came out, Bishoy didn't want to tell me because we were going out to dinner, right? And I was mad excited, okay? And so then he goes upstairs and he stares at my mom, and my mom's
I
like,
wish
"Yeah."
I could see Shoy's face right now.
My mom's like, "Yeah, tell her." So like, we can move on with the day. And so Bishoy's like, "Oh, one of his friend said that the UNC decisions came out." Immediately, I just started bawling. I'm like, "No, they didn't. No, they didn't. You're lying."
Anyway, we got super off topic, but the whole reason I said the story is because the prayer really helped, and I feel like you can look in the Bible like all the time, and like, have you ever like opened up the Bible to a random page,
I love
like
doing that.
and then the verse like relates like perfectly?
Does it relate or do you make it relate?
I feel like
No,
it's
it
both.
relates.
I feel like it's
some of
both.
them are. It's like, dang,
or
right there.
what if it wasn't random and it was the Holy Spirit opening it to
Amen.
that page?
Amen.
Nothing. I don't believe in coincidences, y'all. Like everything. I think everything happens for a reason. And if you look at it from like the Christian perspective, and this is also gonna come with like age and experience. Like I'm much older than you guys, and I'm nothing, but I just know from like recent experiences, nothing is random. Nothing happens. Like everything happens for a reason, and God has placed things in our lives to teach us, including mental health, right? So like you were saying, like with the college applications. You guys were so anxious, so fearful, like what's going to happen. And then you kind of had like an opposite reaction to that. And so like through that, like I'm curious as to how you got through that. And then yours was like praying for 40 minutes and praying the hour of the Agbeya. And what about you? Like what was
Mine
yours?
was Bible verses.
Yeah.
Like the one every single time. Every time I'm nervous, I always go to Philippians 4:6. Like every time. I just
She
have to
has
read
it as her lock screen. Her lock screen's like that verse.
Can you
Thank
share
you
it
for
for
sharing.
reference?
You're welcome.
Yeah. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition. With thanksgiving, present your request to God.
And the peace which surpasses all understanding.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
That's verse 7. Don't take my word for that. No one
I
That's-
no
think
one
it
go
was
check
7.
me for that.
I think it was 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I always use that one. So like even when I was nervous, I'd be like, it's like all in God's plan, and then every time I'm anxious and I feel like it's all on me, I just remember that like that verse, don't be anxious and just present your request to God with prayer and petition. So I go do that exactly, and I just feel so relieved after. And I don't know if it's like I don't know. I know it is the Holy Spirit like, hey, it's okay, and like feeling.
I have a story about that actually. Like, you know how like it's sometimes hard for people to accept that everything is God's plan, but I heard this story in a sermon once. I don't know the exact story, but you'll get the idea when I say it. There was this dude. He was like early 20s, maybe in his teens or something. He passed away, right? His parents were super upset about it. And so they were in a like meeting with Abuna or something, and they were like really like upset, and they were telling Abuna like, oh, why would this happen to me? Like, why did God take away my son, right? Abuna tells them like, oh, like he shows them a vision or something, and he's like, oh, if your son wouldn't have died in the time that he did, he wouldn't have gone to heaven. He would have down a really bad path, and he wouldn't be where he's at right now with me, right? So it just goes to show that like everything happens for a reason, like you said, and like everything is God's plan.
It's so reassuring too.
Yeah, I love stories like that.
So I might be tying it back to this whole anxiety thing, but I actually don't have the same relationship that you guys have, like with like believing in like the process and believing that like God has everything in store for me. And like I understand, like I've seen that little like, I don't know if it's like a story, but like, you know, or like I guess a statement about how you get on a plane and you trust the pilot to drive you, but like, or like to fly you, drive you. Okay. To fly you, but you don't like trust God. But like despite that, like I have a hard time not doing things for myself, because I feel like also a part of um saying that God has a plan for me and God has like everything in store for me, like good. I also feel like I have to be prepared for that. Like I have to put in the work for me to reach that. It's not, it can't just be given to me, which is like,
Yeah.
it's okay. But also I think I get caught into the whole like the preparing part, but never giving up the control part.
I
That's part of your
totally
anxiety.
agree.
That is the anxiety. Sorry to cut you.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say I totally agree with you. I think if we pray for something and we don't put in the work, that's not gonna happen. Like if we're like, oh God, can you give me an A on the test, and then you don't study
Yeah.
whatsoever,
Yes, exactly.
like
I'd like to add that when I was
Yeah.
saying like the Bible verse, it wasn't, oh, let me just pray and like leave it at that and just not do anything. Like I tried my best, studied the best I could, the longest I could, and then like that's what would help me like finish off like, oh, there's no need to be anxious. You did your best. God has the rest. It wasn't like I wasn't trying to say like,
Oh no, I just
just
meant
didn't do
like
anything.
you guys like are better than me, because
No,
like
we're
it
not.
just-
We're not. None of us are.
no,
It's-
girl,
it's-
I promise you, like every single time I am like questioning like the God's plan thing, it gets bad sometimes, but it's like the Bible verses and stuff are reassuring, but it gets bad like for everybody.
Yeah.
Like I promise.
It's not just you. Like
Yeah.
it's literally like
Me.
Yeah.
I'll get anxiety about something and I'm like, oh, I'm a therapist, I should know these things. And it's like, physician, heal thyself, right? Like you can't do that. You should ask my father of confession and he'll tell you like my like need to control every situation. To bring it back to your point though, it's interestingly enough, like how the church does things is so incredibly beautiful. We're actually given peace. It's the only time in our lives that we're anointed in the palm of our hand. Do you guys know when that is? It's during our baptism. So when we enter into the body of Christ through our baptism, we're actually anointed in the palm of our hands, the one time with the anointing of joy and peace. And so it's literally God handing us peace in the palm of our hands. And so we have it in us. It's just our job to access that. And so it's the like I mentioned the anxiety. I wasn't saying like you directly, like
No,
just
I understand. Yeah.
you as a general term. Anxiety, when we have such anxiety, ultimately what it comes down to is lack of control, right? And so we try to control every aspect that we think is in our control. Like I'm going to study, and I still did poorly on this test. Why? I don't know. That's just the example that you gave.
Yeah.
But, it's a poor example, but do you know what I mean though? Like it's the, I think the faith part and the leaving it in God's hands, that's the trickiest part. Like we can always look back at the Bible verses, and our faith is what is gonna come. I think for me personally, me first and foremost, like it's my faith that comes into question at all times. Like, okay, God, like I know you have control, but like, can I drive a little bit? Like, can I just steer the ship a little bit so that I can go in the direction that I need it to go in, and it's not really actually relinquishing that control. And so that's my own anxiety of like not knowing what's ahead of me that causes me to kind of be stuck in that moment.
I think it's also patience too,
Yeah.
because I
I got none.
so impatient. Like I just like I want good things now. Like I just don't want to wait for it, and I don't want to be told like it's gonna happen, it will happen. Like I don't want to hear that one now.
Well, we live in a world of instant gratification. Anything that we want can, like, this device right here is everything to us, right? Like we want pizza, we'll order it, be here in 10 minutes. Maybe not North Carolina because everything is really far away, but like regardless, right? That's the point is like if I need an answer to something, I can get it right now because Google is at my fingertips. I can get that answer. So when we are so accustomed to that, and then we have to come back to a place of, okay, God, I trust you. This is your will. Guide me in the direction that you want me to walk in. And then, okay, like it comes back to me like, all right, I need to like, no, like I'm going to steer the ship. You just, be my map quest kind of thing.
You.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was like, maybe someone's hitting me up.
I have a question. I have another question about the difference between the Coptic community and just in general. Why do you think Egyptians are like super iffy about mental health? What do you think that comes from?
I think ultimately comes down to culture. It's not something that is like our parents, our grandparents are like people like it's just not a thing in Egypt. I don't think. I'm American born and raised, so I was born and raised in a American, I guess, viewpoint, if you will, with my Egyptian background and culture and all that. So, but it's just not a thing. Like everything kind of comes back to, nope, trust in God. Even though Egypt is like like the culture itself is Muslim mostly, but even in Islamic culture, it's the same thing. It's the same concept of like, no, Allah has it, Allah has it. So like, it's it's something that just doesn't come up, and even like there's no studies of not that I'm aware of, at least in Egypt, of mental health or any of the Middle Eastern countries. But it's in America, like we have all access to that. And then in the last several years with technology and COVID really put a spotlight on mental health. So like where before there was a really big push to normalize the mental health, I guess, industry. COVID just kind of brought it into a spotlight. I always say this to all my clients, so anyone who will listen to me, really, is like the worst thing that they could have done during COVID is say social distancing. They should have said physical distancing, because that just saying social distancing, again, like we are social creatures. So saying social distancing, that just like it places this mental, like look at what happened, right? Like everybody was like, no, don't touch me, don't come near me, I can't hug you, I can't shake your hand, I can't be within 6 feet of you, or whatever it was. And then people were dying by themselves. People were, like turning against their neighbors and their parents and their siblings. And it's just like, what is happening right now? Had they, I think, said physical distance, I think it would have placed a lighter mental load on people. But even in that, like people were stuck in their homes, not allowed to talk to people. So that, I think, it became this segue, I guess, for where we are today, with all of the information on mental health coming out in the Egyptian community as well, in the Coptic community. So I just think it really comes down to a cultural thing, and then how lack of information, lack of education, maybe. But now we have an overabundance of education and information to our, I would even say, to our detriment, because that causes anxiety as well.
I have a question about like you saying that we're social creatures. So, like, what about mental health issues that are like sociopaths or like psychopaths? Like, is that like, because when you say like social creatures, like they're not social creatures. So I'm just a little curious about that.
So that's complicated, and I think it's multifaceted. There's so people who are typically like psychopaths. Trauma plays a very big role in how we handle a lot of things, right? So like when our brains develop in a through a trauma, our brain is almost always on a fight or flight mode, right? But psychopaths and sociopaths, and actually oftentimes people have them mixed up. Like sociopaths are like the uh so oftentimes, actually, they say so psychopaths are the ones that are like leading companies, CEOs, because they're cold, calculated, they're charming, they can be like the Ted Bundys of society. Do you guys know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay. But like I I think Ted Bundy, even, like, he had an immense amount of trauma in his life, and then but like ultimately it's the absence of God, the absence of anything good. And I truly believe that with everything in me. Like evil in this world, like people who are psychopaths, people who hurt children, people who hurt elders, animal, things like that, like that's not of God. And if it's not of God, where does it come from, right? So like I think it can be a compound issue of like trauma, absence of God, absence of family, absence of everything that's good, um because you don't really typically see that in good, in, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like, yeah, I was just thinking about this because there's a philosopher who was talking about like the problem of evil. And she was saying that the problem is it's the absence of God. It's where you like don't um like there's no desire for God or anything like that. So that's what causes evil. I don't know if that's like relevant, but I was just thinking about that because when you said it. But yeah, that's why she said that babies that like just come out die, or and like things that like are uncontrollable. Um, I don't know. Actually, I just lied. That's not why babies die. That was the critique against her. But she's a really good philosopher, though. If I find her, she does talk about God and how like the desire for God, or like you're not being on the same path as God, is what like creates evil, is like what deters you. Of course, every philosopher does not know everything, so there are critiques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the difference in mental health between men and women? How do they deal with it? And like, what do you see that's different in?
So, so I can't give you a statistic.
Mhm.
Statistically, more women come to therapy. I have more female clients than I do male.
Mhm.
Men, I think, and I can't speak broadly, right? Like that's like saying all men are X, all women are X. Women typically tend to have more emotional responses than men do. Men think very logically, and men have a way of compartmentalizing their stuff, right? So like if men are driven to, so like a married man, for instance, right? Like his goal is, okay, like I have to provide for my family. And instinctively that's his role as the man, right? So like that could be his focus. And then stress from finances, stress from marital demands, complication, like whatever the case is, those things can come. But typically men manifest their stress in anger. And that's not all men, obviously, but that's typically like when I have couples that come in, oh, his response is always anger, and then he'll walk away, or he's yelling, and then the woman is trying to, either like, oh, she's always crying, or she's always yelling, or she's nagging, right? But oftentimes it's really just a communication uh kind of disconnect. So men, it really, and obviously, like, again, like trauma plays a big part in that. Like if you have a man that is like completely shut down from all of his emotions, he's not going to be able to speak about what is happening in his life. And then another thing is too, like people don't know how to name their emotions. So like I'll ask men, women, children, like I don't work with children anymore, but I'll ask them, like, do you know how to name your emotions? Like if you guys can name like 5 emotions, what would they be right now?
Happy, sad, angry, mad. Wait. Happy,
Frus-
sad, angry,
frustrated,
nervous.
anxious,
Yeah,
nervous.
so-
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, that's good. It's more than 5, and that's good. But the human brain is capable of feeling like hundreds of emotions at the same time, or just separately, or and more than one emotion can be true at the same time. Like I can be happy, and I could be at peace and still have some sadness, or still have some worry, or you know what I mean? Like not an anxious worry, but so it really, I think, just depends on multiple things. I don't like to place people or like statistics in just a category, because that doesn't encompass every single, like every man in this room deals with their anger or frustration in a different way, right? Every woman in this room deals with their things differently. A lot of men typically tend to internalize things, and then they come to counseling and start to, like, through obviously like leading questions and things like that, start to kind of work through, like, oh yeah, I never would have connected X and Y had you not asked that specific question, or asked this question in this way.
I think that's interesting because also sorry to bring you back to like philosophy, but um they actually say that men are the ones who like load their emotional like distress or whatever it may be on women. Like women tend to be the ones who are holding most of the emotional responsibility within like a relationship.
I could see that.
Yeah, and I can understand why like anger is like the way that they take it out, but I also do think that that's like what we see. I think behind the scenes it kind of like your words kind of describe what you're like thinking, or how you're feeling. And so I feel like a lot of times it like blows up and during like a argument or a conversation, and a lot of times women like tend to take in that responsibility of like being the emotional like safe, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. Actually, so anger, like you're right though, like in the words that people say, like you can hear what somebody is saying. And a lot of times though, like if you're angry and you're yelling at your significant other, there's typically going to be some shutdown, so they're only going to be defensive, right? And not even just significant other. If you're arguing with siblings, friends, like that's just the go-to. As soon as you say like you did X, Y, and Z, that emotional wall comes up, and all you're ready to do is defend yourself. But like to your point about like words coming out in anger, I actually do this exercise with like all ages of people. It's called the anger iceberg. And typically anger is the tip of the iceberg. It's what we see above the water, but underneath the iceberg is so vast that we don't see, like, that's actually what's typically going to sink the ship. And in that base of the iceberg, there's shame. So many men feel so much shame, whether it's, you know, something that they've done, something that they've been through, or somebody talking down at them and it made them feel emasculated. So there's shame, there's fear, disappointment, anger, sadness, all of these things. But because we don't know how to process our emotions, name our emotions, it comes out as just anger. Like even us women, like women do that too, right? Like how many times have like all of us here, right? Like whether it's that time of the month or we're going through something that's difficult, we're bottling it up, and then like we're a simmering pot until something triggers it. Like this bag fell off of the table and I just lost my mind. Everything now is like coming to the surface, boiling over, right? Like something so silly is like, bro, it's just a bag. Like relax. Don't ever tell a woman to relax or calm down. Like every woman just cringed when I said that.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean though? Like, so
Yeah.
it's if we don't deal with our emotions, if we don't deal with the things that are happening, we're gonna be at this constant simmering point, and then we're just gonna boil over at the bag falling off the table.
Yeah. I saw a post one time. It was talking about how like women will like be dealing with so much pain. Like they're like sitting in heels all day and like wearing an
Your flats.
uncomfortable, yeah, literally my flats feet out right now.
I think I know exactly what you're about to say, but keep
Yeah,
going.
Camera
no,
down.
yeah, like it's like they have all these different like pains and like different things that they're dealing with, and then like they won't say anything and keep it in so long. But like a man will like
Or anyone.
yeah,
Or
anyone, but like other people will like every single thing that's hurting them or something like that will like say, oh, this hurts, I'm annoyed by this, or I feel this way, and then all you see is like a woman blow up, and then you're like,
It's because they're
she's
holding
so
it in for so
emotional. Yeah,
long. So
yeah.
when they do actually like
yeah, it's
blow
like
up, it's
she's
'cause
so
they-
emotional she can't like,
Yeah, I was
handle
gonna
it,
It's
like,
'cause-
not
say-
logical.
no, I saw this thing. It was like, oh, like say someone's like in heels for like 3 hours, their feet have been hurting for 2, but they just haven't said anything until it like really pushes them over. the
Yeah.
edge.
And I
But
feel
yeah,
like the stereotype, like, oh, women are so emotional. I'm not gonna be emotional then. Like, I'm gonna suppress it until like I
Them
literally
nodding in the
cannot.
back. Okay,
That's-
enough.
But that's actually a really good point. So like if you're not given the space to discuss things openly and honestly, whether it's in your household, in your marriages, in your friendships, right? Like if you're not given that opportunity to say what's on your mind, and it's taken in a way of love, really, which is what we should be doing. We should have kindness, love, and compassion towards everybody, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. And so when we give somebody that avenue to, you know, openly express what they're going through, like, hey, like I've had a really rough day. I've been in heels all day, and you know, the bag fell off the table and it really bothered me and I don't know why. And you know, when I'm given that opportunity to say what's on my mind freely, and you know, even if I'm rambling, which I tend to do, you can ask my husband and he's probably at home like nodding his head like, oh my gosh, he doesn't stop talking. But it's when he gives me that space to like openly describe my feelings, I'm like, wow, I feel so much better. And then the same, right? Like you kind of build that like resilience almost to like, oh, she's so emotional, and oh, like, oh well, I'm just gonna shut down. Like no, like when I have, even if it's just one avenue to have somebody just listen to me, I think that's so important, to just have like a person or a group of people that you can just confide in, and just once in a while, like, hey guys, like let's talk about our days, let's talk about what's actually going on. Like so many people, you look at them, like you would never think that somebody that you're sitting next to or sitting across from has anxiety or has depression, right? Like some of the people that, do you guys know who Robin Williams is? I'm aging myself.
no, sorry.
You know who I'm talking about. I appreciate you, man. So you seen Aladdin?
Yeah.
Okay, so the voice of the genie.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the guy who did the voice of the genie, he
Looking him up right now.
Yeah, look him up. So he was a comedian and he was fantastic. He was a fantastic actor. He ended up dying by suicide. And so like when this news came out, it was like, wow, no way, like he was so happy all the time, and but somebody who's supposed to bring joy to others, and like all of the expectations that we placed on him because, oh well, he's a comedian, so he must have everything together, right? Like that.
Oh,
Robin Williams,
oh, he
Mrs.
did that.
Doubtfire, and
Yeah. What's that? Jamon.
Jumanji.
Jumanji?
Yeah,
Yeah.
OG.
He's in Jumanji.
Wait, I
Original
haven't seen-
Jumanji.
Oh,
Look,
no, I haven't seen the old
original
one.
Can't
Jumanji
go
from the
far.
90s.
Oh, I got you.
No, that is the best one. Like all the remakes after that were so bad.
So yeah, so that's just something to kind of keep in mind.
Sorry.
Like you don't know what, like it's like that cliche Instagram post, right? Like you don't know what somebody's going through, but it's absolutely factual. You don't know what somebody is going through. Like we sit and bury ourselves in our phones and doom scroll, as one of my clients likes to say, and it literally does nothing for you. If anything, it's another band-aid solution. That doesn't actually help you. And instead of running to literally the only person who can help us, which is God,
Material.
Also, the doom scrolling, I'm very guilty of it, but
Oh, same.
it takes away from like all the connections like that you could have with God in that time and
does.
everything, and it's just there was so many more things that you could be doing with that time.
Yeah.
But guilty, guys. So
No, same. Listen, I speak first and foremost from my own experience, and I've also doom scrolled. It's just a matter of like reining it in and realizing, right? Like the first step in mental health wellness is realizing and recognizing that you have a problem and that you most likely play an enormous role in your own problems. And accountability is so big, and so many people don't have it. Like it's almost always, and I say almost always somebody else's fault. Like, oh no, but if this person didn't do this, or if they didn't say this, or if they didn't act this way, then I wouldn't, whatever. We have this thing, it's called locus of control. We can only control so much, and the things that we can't control, we need to learn to let go of for our own mental benefit.
I have a question about the men and women thing. Wouldn't their response to emotions and stuff be their upbringing mostly?
So it can be, it is multifaceted, right? So like we were talking a little bit earlier about so if boys, right, like, and not just in the Coptic community or Egyptian culture, a lot of boys are told don't cry because you're a boy, man up, right? Don't show any weakness by crying or showing any emotion, because that has become synonymous with weakness, when that's just not the case. So we do learn how to do things from our families and from our, not that there's anything wrong with our families. Like I don't want that to be like, oh well, if my mom wasn't X or if my dad wasn't this, then I would have been a different way. Because honestly, like, yeah, parents make mistakes, but so do we, and we learn from those mistakes and move on, right? Like so we can learn from that. And that's I don't know if it was on air or off air, but like we were talking about like accountability, like having accountability and having just recognizing like, okay, like these things have been going not well for me, and so I'm gonna now recognize that and then take the next step to fix that problem. So yeah, so I think it is multifaceted, where it is how we're raised. It is also societal, because if you look at society too, men aren't allowed, like now I've noticed this thing where like men aren't allowed to do anything. There's a lot of man bashing from feminists or just women who have been scorned by men. And so there's a lot of things I think working against men in society and in the mental health field, and there's so many things like that can contribute to that.
How can the sacraments and fasting and all the things in the church, like how can the church support mental health? How can we get help from the church?
The first thing I think is talking about it, just educating people about what it is, how we can how we can use, like you guys were talking about the Bible earlier, and like there's the passages from the Bible, like how we can use scripture as a tool to help us with our fears, our worries. There's so many, even in just Isaiah, there's so many phrases, not phrases, Bible verses that will say like, be anxious for nothing, and things like that. So first and foremost, we have to have open conversation about it, and it can't be viewed as taboo anymore. It has to be something that is willingly discussed, and honestly discussed, right? Like we can't keep going with the mindset of, no, this doesn't happen in our church, or no, we're Christian, we're not supposed to be, have mental health issues or anything like that, because it's not this thing that's only, for Americans, or people in North Carolina, or you know what I mean? Like it's all over the world. So I think first and foremost, just having the conversation, bringing people who have experience, whether you yourself have suffered from it in ways that you have kind of tried to overcome it or work through it, having therapists that have a Christian viewpoint. And I specify and emphasize that because mental health, the world of mental health, is not Christian. So earlier on, again, I don't remember if it was on air or off air, but if you're going to find a counselor, please make sure that they align with your values and your morals, because they can very quickly bring you down a path of away from Christ. So if Christ is the center and the foundation of everything that you do, that will be something that, is an automatic thing. And then if you do find somebody that's not Christian or that doesn't align with your values, move on, find somebody else. But so talking about it, having conversations, educating from a young age. I would even go as far as saying like elementary school, and just talking about emotions, right? Like talking about our feelings, and bring biblical references into those conversations. And then as you get into middle school, having conversations, because I spoke to a middle school girls class at my church, and it was so enlightening to see the things that they deal with. Like a lot of the questions that they were asking me are relevant to what they are dealing with now that the church sometimes can't answer. So, just even giving that avenue of having that, place to talk about it. Because the thing is, if you can't come to church and talk about it, and if you can't come to your servants and talk about it, where are you going to go and get your answers? From the world, who teaches you what, right?
Yeah.
So,
I also feel like, sorry.
no.
Oh, I was just saying, like you saying that, like, what does the world teach you? And
Yeah.
I don't.
I was gonna say, I also feel like finding the right father of confession is really important. Also, like I feel like that is someone you should be able to confide in, and finding the one that like relates to you and is like perfect for you is really important. Also,
Yeah.
I was gonna say also, like, on the topic of abunas, I think it's hard sometimes because like I've heard multiple times from people that like sometimes it's not really good to like trust abuna. Like they're also human, and so they kind of like spill the beans sometimes or say something like out loud that like hint towards something that might not be targeted towards you, but it just feels like it's targeted towards you. So like, not saying that like don't go to your abuna and like talk to them or whatever, but I'm just saying like I think it's important, back to what you're saying, finding the right abuna, because I know like a lot of us just like stray away when we get one bad experience and then just like refuse to go back because I don't know, from fear or uncomfortable.
I agree to
I
an
think it's pride
extent.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree to an extent, but I feel like Abuna was ordained for a reason, and so if whatever answer he gives you, it's not like he's a human too. It's like, oh, like take that to like that's what God told him to tell you, or
So this is where I might disagree. I
Okay.
think we are human. They're like,
Yes.
like Abuna
Yeah.
is not something that is higher than us. He is our father, and he is someone that I go to for guidance. But at the end of the day, he is human. He still makes mistakes, and he is capable of like, I don't want to say steering you from the wrong path, because that's not the case. But
Giving advice that doesn't apply to you.
right, it's like not there's like their school of thought or the way that they think is more, I mean, that's, we were just talking about how like you're brought up and stuff like that. So it's like he's still human. He still has his own opinion. He has his own like thought, and so it might not align with yours. But at the end of the day, like at least at a baseline level, he still can connect you to like your spiritual side, but maybe not like, I don't know. I just like, I'm not attacking Abuna, but I'm just saying like at the end of the day, like if you don't feel comfortable with who you're talking to, then it's totally fine to go find a different one.
Yeah.
That is not attack towards any Abuna, but like,
Yeah. But you're right though. It's true. Like,
And Buenas have said it themselves.
yes.
Yeah.
So
I feel like there's different abunas for like different people, and it's like it's just whoever you connect to the most, you know?
And like also, if no, I'm not saying like don't have an abuna confession. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying if you're not fully comfortable with your abuna yet, like you're not like your father of confession, you're not just best friends immediately and like able to connect with them. And so when I got my first father of confession, I was like iffy. I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't really know the abuna like that. This was my first ever father of confession. I didn't really know them. And so I would talk to my friends more. But I also found that as like a valve, like being able to talk to my friends. It was nice, but like Abuna gave me like tips,
Yeah.
scriptures, like ways to go about it, versus my friends kind of told me like, hey, it's okay. But like I still think both of them benefited me in the end. Like I have my friend who's the same age as me. I don't want to say like same school, but like they get the same idea that I'm like putting into perspective. Like they get it because they were there, they experienced it themselves, and they're doing it at the same time as me, so they know exactly how to respond, but not like Abuna does with the scriptures and what to do next. So I don't know. I feel like when I bring it up, everybody's always like, no, like just bring it up to Abuna, not really your friends. But I feel like your friends can do things that Abuna might not be able to because he isn't your age. He isn't like in high school right now like you are. He like, as you said earlier, I don't know if we were on air or not, but you were saying how high school is different back then compared to now, and like it's two opposite things.
Yeah, very.
So I still think it's helpful. I don't think
Yeah.
it's something that should be
No,
shut
I
out.
think I agree. I think your friends can help guide you to take the next step with Abuna, or they can like kind of scoot you over there.
That too.
But you know, like I feel like talking to your friends is such a good like. Also, okay, I was gonna bring this up later, but I never found a chance. But here we go. No, I feel like the community like you build in not just the church, but like in the church also, the community you build with your friends and stuff, and you have these people that you can relate to, and you're talking about your personal things with. I think it's a really good thing to like help with mental health and stuff. But yeah, like when you're talking to your friends and everything, and sometimes I do tell my friends like, oh, like I give them my opinion, I'll be like, but oh, like you should go talk to Abun about this, you know?
And it's also the friends you talk to. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can't
I was just
expect
gonna
good
reiterate.
results from someone you know isn't gonna give you a good insight.
Yeah.
But
And this is where discernment and wisdom come in.
Yeah.
And this is where your prayer comes in as well, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay, is what this person saying to me or the advice that they're giving, is it going to lead me to Christ, to Abuna, and then through Abuna, Christ, right? Like, or
Mhm.
whatever. But, or is it going to take me away or, you know, cause me to have bad feelings towards Abuna or towards, so like that stumbling block that could potentially be there. Again, like this is why discernment comes in prayer and asking for that guidance. But yeah, that's it is important though. It is important to have a good friend group and to have a good community, a safe people that you can talk to. And then it's also important that like if you have somebody that might not be a good influence, that you set that boundary with them as well.
Yeah.
Because healthy boundaries are good.
Yeah.
Healthy boundaries are very important, not toxic boundaries.
Am I the only one who has like different abunas for different situations? Like if it's like more of like a young situation, then I find an abuna that like is younger that like I can go talk to, but then like something more like philosophical or something like I'm just like struggling with and understanding spiritually, like I have a different abuna. I don't know if that's like everyone, but like
No, I do the same. And
Yeah.
even like
I don't know that many.
Yeah.
No, that- No,
I
two-
thought you were talking at
three.
first. I thought you were saying you had like multiple fathers of
Me
conviction
too.
at
I
the
wa-
same time.
Can we
I
do
get what
that?
you're saying now. I get you're saying you go to different abunas, but I was like,
Yeah.
wait, that's a thing. I was like, whoa. Anyway,
No, but I
But
think
yeah.
there's wisdom in that too, right? Like, and even like my personal father of confession, my current one, will tell me to go to like an older priest sometimes.
Mhm.
If like he'll be like, "This is what I'm telling you, but go to this person just to like reinforce what I'm saying." Or
no, I
to,
agree. I feel like, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I also like get input from sermons. Like that might sound silly. Like I've
Yes.
never
Oh, that's
talked
so
to this
important.
priest
Yeah.
before.
Yes,
But, like
yes.
those sermons, I'm like, wow, like this is my
And-
situation.
And sometimes,
I don't
yeah,
have to
yeah,
admit
they
that it's me
connect like
struggling.
crazy
it's
sometimes.
like
This-
opening the
yeah.
Bible at a random
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
And it's like for me, I get
random page. I am such a believer that like if I don't know if this is wrong for me to say, but when you open up the Bible, I feel like whatever verse is there, you're right. It's gonna guide you the way that you want it to. But I do think that we are the ones who kind of shape that verse towards how we're feeling.
I'm gonna have to
Could be.
disagree.
I want to share.
No, you're good. But like that's just like how I feel. Like I'm not saying that like that's not. I believe
Yeah,
that like whenever we open up the Bible, but I also feel like every single verse could also make me feel just
True.
as good.
Going back to that, I have an experience that I experienced. I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was really weird. I was like, I woke up and then I heard like a voice in my head that was like, read this verse. Do you remember
I
this?
love this story.
I had this voice in my head that was like, read this verse. I was like middle of the night. So I opened my Bible app I probably should have opened the physical one, but
It's okay.
I opened the Bible app. Is the exact verse, right? I don't know what I was struggling with at the time, but it's still pretty cool. Then I get up the next day, I go to school. I have my Bible app set to give me notifications at 10 o'clock, right?
And it's like the verse of the day.
Yeah, the verse of the day. 10 o'clock comes. That verse was the exact verse I read that night. It was the exact one. And it was just like, oh, like, dang, God is really with me. Like, it was like the exact one. Like, I texted Maria and I was like,
I was sitting in
hello?
like,
No, but it's like, no, I thought it was like just, when you think it's just a random voice, but the fact that like I got that verse of the day after was crazy.
Do you
But
forget who lives inside of us?
yeah,
you're right. You're right.
you're right.
Gotta
Yeah,
say
but
it. We literally we have the Holy Trinity, like the Holy Spirit. Why do we take communion? What's
Yeah.
the point, right? So like, it's not, when I said earlier, I don't believe in coincidences anymore, because why?
yeah.
Like, for what? If it's not from God, it's from the devil. And so like, I know those things to be very, very true and very specific for me personally. Like, and I pray that like everybody gets to that place. And this is by no means me saying like, oh, I'm this holy person, because I'm definitely not. Again, ask my husband. um, but seriously, like, we forget, and this is where like social media comes in, right? Like, anything that takes us away from God, like our anxieties, our fears, our worries, these are not things that are from God. These are things that are from the devil. And so like, again, like, if you're gonna find somebody that is a therapist, find a Christian one. Because if you would have told that to a therapist that wasn't culturally competent, oh, she has schizophrenia, she hears
Mhm.
voices. Like, no, I don't hear voices. I hear very clearly,
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
you know what I mean? So it's
I actually, so that's interesting that you said that like those negative thoughts and those like anxieties and all that like is not thoughts from God, but rather from the devil. And so, how do you like argue that like mental health is like prevalent when you could also say that it's because of the devil?
the devil roars about like a, what is it? The devil walks about like a roaring lion, right? So like, mental health is prevalent, but what, like, right now the devil is probably attacking all of our mental health, whether it's in any form, in our social form, our emotional form, and our thoughts. Actually, one of the church fathers said this, and I don't remember who it is. I can look at my Amazon cart for the book, but our thoughts literally determine our lives. And this is actually like in the mental health world. Have you heard of CBT, cognitive behavior therapy?
Oh yeah.
So
I
like,
have
Psychology 101.
psychology 101, right? But like, if the
Sorry,
little
guys.
cycle that like, the cycle of it is like, our thoughts are connected to our feelings, which then connect to our behavior. And so if we could change our thoughts, it changes our feelings, it changes our behavior. So they're all connected. Why not spiritual, right? Like, so like, it is very prevalent because our spiritual lives are also connected to our mental health. Oftentimes, like, I personally, when I'm in a low emotional place, I don't want to pray. I don't want to look up to the true physician of my who can heal any and everything, right? Like, I don't, but he heals the brokenhearted and binds up our wounds. Like, I just looked up and I saw that, but um I'm not thinking about that when I'm in a low place. My thoughts are like, ugh, whatever. Like, I don't feel like praying, or I'm just gonna lay in this bed, or God's not gonna help me because he
Yeah.
left me to be in this place. Like, those are the thoughts that are coming from the devil. So like, oftentimes I'll tell clients who don't want Christian counseling, right? Like, I'll be like, I tell people all the time, the devil is a liar, but so is anxiety. Anxiety is a liar. Anxiety will sit here and tell you this entire room is on fire and everything in your life is blowing up. But if you actually step back and say, like, this room is not on fire, my life is not falling apart, like, this moment right now, I just really have to use the bathroom, whatever it is, right? Like, and I say that lightly, but it's not something that is it I think there's an explanation for everything, right? Like, our thoughts are generated from three places, so ourselves, God, and from the devil. And it's really up to us to discern, like, okay, is this from you, God? Is this something that you are telling me, or is this a lie that the devil is telling me that he wants me to believe? Because what's his ultimate goal? His ultimate goal is to get us away from God. So anytime that he plants that seed of despair or that seed of fear, of anxiety, it's taking us away from our hope and our joy and our peace in God. So it's really like, it is prevalent because of that.
I found that like instead of me like when I'm sad, it's oh I don't want to read scripture. It's more for me when I don't read scripture,
You're
I
sad.
get sad and I'm just like, oh my gosh, life is awful. Like, it's just so bad. It's so stressful. But literally the second I read the Bible, after like not being able to for a minute, just like kind of fighting myself, like, no, I don't want to read it. No, I don't want to read it.
I agree.
Yeah, like immediately I'm just like, wait, life isn't even that bad.
It ain't even bad, bro.
So it's like, it's like literal proof. Like, I'm living it right there. Like,
Yeah.
2 seconds ago, I was over here saying life's the worst. All I did was open the scripture, just any chapter that I started reading.
Even
and
if you don't understand it.
Yeah, like it does not relate to anything. I'm just like, wow, like this is so nice.
Yeah. And some of the stories are so cool. Just like,
Yeah.
like,
It's like
dang,
so
yeah.
reassuring. Like, you're stressed about that. Like, look at Job, you know?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, he went through it too. He made it. So, like,
Right. And he has it so
nice.
much worse than I do.
I think though, like you were saying, it's like hard to get yourself to.
Yeah.
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 So
Mhm.
I don't know. It's like for me when I'm like stressing over an exam or like my GPA or whatever it may be, I'm like, Bible not gonna help me right now.
Yeah, because it's
But-
not
I
what you're
do
thinking
find
about, right?
I find it hard to turn if I'm stressing about test grades and stuff. I don't turn to the Bible. I turn to YouTube videos to like study. Like
Yep.
I'm
Social
turning
media.
I'm turning to like, oh, like what can help me like understand this material faster, and like these fast study guides and stuff. And it's just like
Like, for me, it's like, oh, let me study. And then at the end,
I'll pray.
yeah,
Mhm.
instead of let me pray, study. Okay, I'm stressed. Let me pray again. Let me study. Like, I know that's so bad and I'm working on it, but like, yet again, it is reality. It's like, let me do
It's a
the
habit.
worldly thing. Yeah, like, let me study so I could do the best I can. And then at the end, let me just pray.
Yeah.
Like, just to really top it off.
So it comes back to that control factor.
Yeah.
Right? What can I control in this moment? I'm gonna open up YouTube and I'm gonna look at these study guides and Mishafe, and that's it. I'm gonna know it. But like, so personally, when I was in grad school, like the biggest exam that I had to take was the national counselor exam, and I was freaking out over it. I was like, God, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like imposter syndrome was so real in that moment, and I was just a grad student. It didn't even set in like until I became an actual therapist, and I was like, bro, I really don't know. But anyway, I was like studying and doing all these things, and then I was like, what am I doing? Like, okay, I'm gonna do what I need to do, and then when I finally like just turned that off, and I was like, okay, God, it's in your hands. Like, if this is meant, like, you put the inclination for me to be a therapist in my heart. Why? I don't know. I don't know what road you want me to go down, but I'm gonna trust in you in this moment. And in that moment, I was like, okay, there's a prayer by Pope Kyrillos, like that he made for people in exams, and I just kept praying that over. Like, I literally stopped studying.
I'm gonna need that.
Yo, I got you. I'll find it and I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, my mom used to
Post
give me
it.
the picture when
Yeah.
I went to
Yeah.
go study.
And
I used to like I take the picture with me when I go to the exam. I put it in my bag. Or
Yeah,
something.
same.
Yeah.
Like St. Mary, like anytime I had any like surgery, or like when I had my daughter, I had a C-section, and St. Mary was literally in my pocket of my gown on the operating table. Like, I kid you not, she's walked me through so many of like my health issues and things like that. And I was like, in those moments, in those specific moments, I knew for a fact, like, okay, like, God, you will not leave me. You're here. You're here. Despite my anxiety, despite my fear, despite me bringing this person into the world that I have no idea what I'm about to do with, despite all of these things, I know that you will never leave me. And then in the times in between, I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. What am I talking about? Right. So like, we have to kind of like keep reminding ourselves. So like having that reminder of like, okay, instead of picking up YouTube, instead of picking up, put your phone away and just be still and know that I am God, right? It's in the first hour prayers of the Igbeya, right? Like the Igbeya is there for our, it should be our, like, it's hand in hand with the Bible, right? Like we should be looking to it for everything, because in every single hour of the Igbeya, there's a reason why there's a psalm there, right? In the first hour alone, it's talking about like leaving our anxieties alone, and I might be wrong, so Abuna, if you're watching this, I'm really sorry, but but I just know, like, you know, there's so much wisdom in the Bible and in the Igbeya prayers and all of the things that the church literally hands us that we forget about and that we don't take advantage of, and instead, like, we'll be like, oh no, it's boring, I don't want to do this, or been there, done that. Like,
I was gonna say, like, sometimes, like, with the Igbeya, I'm just like, oh, like, why can't I formulate my own prayers? Because I was taught, like, oh, it's like a prayer book. Like, if you need guidance, go to it. If you don't know how to pray, like, go to it. And so sometimes I'm just like, okay, but why can't I just pray?
you'll see
Like,
them till this day.
yeah. And it's like, after I started learning about what it's, like, really there for, before that, I was just like, no, I'm gonna pray, like, myself. And then when I started reading, I was like, wow, didn't pray about that, forgot that even existed. And so it's like, it's nice. It's like everything all put together, like literally a guide in your prayers or for your prayers.
It's dope, y'all. So how do you help? Like if somebody comes to you and says like, I have anxiety and they put me on Adderall or like, I don't know, that's maybe whatever. I have anxiety and they put me on Lexapro or like whatever.
Taking that one.
Yeah. And Lexapro is actually so like the side effects. Anyway,
Trust me, I know. I did not sleep.
Yeah. So that's part
Well,
of
at
the
night at least.
Yeah.
During the entire day. So
the side effects of medication are oftentimes like, have you ever seen the commercials of like, oh, this is the medication, this is what you're going to treat, but these are all of the side effects to the point where you forget the actual thing that you're coming
It
to
just
treat.
keeps going.
It's oh, you can die, but here, take this medication. Like, no, thank you. I think I will pass on that. So how do you help somebody that is coming to you like a friend, right? Like it kind of comes back to having accountability, the willingness to make a change in your life. Oftentimes, from what I have seen personally, right? Like when somebody's coming to me, I've been diagnosed, I have anxiety, X, Y, and Z. If you're coming to me with an open mind and saying like, I'm looking for solutions that aren't necessarily medication, help me out. That person is more than likely willing to forsake medication and kind of go back down to the root cause of things. But somebody who's adamant about like, no, I have to be on this because I've had people like that too. No, I have to be because it helps me with my ADHD, my this, my that. It doesn't actually help at all. In some cases, yes, it can help. It can help certain symptoms of certain diagnoses rather. But to like, you can kind of lead them in the direction of saying like, hey, like I've heard, a lot of therapists have talked about the adverse side effects of going on this medication. So, there are other options. But if you come out and say like, oh, you shouldn't be on this because blah, 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 they're just going to come out and say like, well, you don't know me. Or like, it's a very defensive place and it's kind of a tricky situation. So I think with discernment and just knowing who your audience is, right? Like you're not going to talk to somebody who's combative about like, maybe you shouldn't be on this medication because the side effects are being, anger outbursts and things like that, right? Like that's not somebody that would be willing to take advice from somebody. And even because honestly, some people, like if you complain to somebody, right? Like it's like, I didn't want advice from you. I just wanted you to listen. And so we oftentimes give unsolicited advice, which is probably the worst thing that you can do, especially if you're not versed in anything. Like a lot of people, like we were talking about social media earlier, right? A lot of people that are claiming to be quote unquote experts are not actually experts. They're not licensed. They're not able to give diagnosing correctly. You're not even able to even this is going to be controversial, so I'm really sorry. But
okay.
even some people that are that are prescribing medications, like you don't know. Like I've actually asked current med students, like, what is your education on medications that you give for mental health? And it's like, oh, we were just told like if you have this, this is it, or like there's no actual like, okay, like let's look at the adverse side effects. Let's look at like what the symptoms that you're actually having. Cause you can list one symptom and somebody will be like, oh, here, take Lexapro, take this sedative and you'll be fine and everything will be okay. So it's really everything is really multifaceted, but like if the person is willing to have the conversation about like, hey, like let's look at other avenues besides medication, then absolutely. If not, then that's just something that you would have to probably step back and wait for them to kind of come to that conclusion and pray that they come to that conclusion. Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people are like, well, this didn't work, so I'm just going to move on to the next worst thing, or, not realizing like I actually have to talk about what's happening. Like what, again, root cause is like, and I emphasize this so much because that is really, that's it. Like getting down to the root cause is so important in healing.
Yeah. What are some? Go ahead.
When you talk about root cause, like, do you agree with that psychoanalytic therapy approach? Where, like, I got my psych slides up here, okay? I'm being serious though, because I remember when I was learning it, I was like, do we stand with this? Like, what do you mean we're looking into their dreams, looking into like their past, and like, oh, what's the latent and manifest material? I'm just like, do we believe in that? Like, what do you mean I'm going into my dreams and seeing, oh, you saw a bug, this is what it means? Like,
no, that's stupid. I'm sorry. That's I'm sorry. Like I'm not gonna like, oh, that honestly, that's like borderline like tarot card reading. Like I'm gonna go to a.
That's what I thought.
That's an interesting
Okay, I have a
take,
question
though,
okay.
because also
You're good.
but I was gonna say like we also have a lot of like dreams, and then we say like, well, God came to me in that dream, and God
But did
put
he
this.
though? But did he? That's
Okay,
the thing.
but
Because
I-
if go ahead, go.
Oh, I wasn't
That was
talking.
me,
That was
that
her.
was
Oh, sorry.
I think the mics like are
My
weird.
bad.
So anyway.
I heard it from my right ear. That's right.
Anyway, okay. Oh yeah. When we're talking about dreams, you know how in the Bible, what was the guy's name? Oh my gosh. The Pharaoh. The Pharaoh that had the dreams and Joseph
Oh.
translated.
Yeah, that.
How what is our belief? Because if you say like, oh, like the dreams, like they can't be interpreted like that, or you're like God can't come into like to you in a dream, where's that line where it's like,
Yeah.
So, who was Joseph? Like, what was his relationship to God? Right? Like, I
man of
don't
God?
know. the
I don't
story.
know.
A very strong relationship.
Right. Like he was like all of our prophets, all of our, like people will come now and say like, oh, I'm a prophet. And I actually this week alone, I've heard, I think 2 different men talking about the Bible and the things that they were saying. Like one guy was like, oh, Christ did not die on the cross. Sorry, what? And you don't get salvation from the cross or from Christ dying on the cross. And he was literally talking. And I was in that moment, I was praying and I was like, God, please don't let this guy plant the seed in this person that he's talking to. Like, please, because that's so false. And he's like, well, if you look at this Bible verse, he died from the tree. Okay, guy, but where did the wood of the cross come from? Right? Like, it's just nuances, right? So like, I don't know. So also dream interpretations is a very like psychology thing. That's not something that like people have asked me about dreams. I'm like, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Like, yes, our dreams can, like, we can dream about our anxieties and things like that. I would just be very careful on like, oh, well, God told me this because X, Y, and Z, especially without guidance from Abuna and just guidance in general. Like, because just as much as God can talk to us, so can the devil. The devil can come and he already plants seeds that are lies, right? So like he can come into our dreams. And this is why it's so important to pray at all times, at all hours, right? Like we have, again, back to the Agbeya, we have the Agbeya, it's the prayer book of the hours, the Jesus prayer, right? Like, my Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me, a sinner. Say that at all times. It's called the arrow prayer for a reason, right? Like it's literally, there are books about this. There are stories of monks that have, there's so much there. So I would just be very, very, very careful about, oh, well, I had this dream and it's from God, or it's from,
How do you
I
know?
was about to say, how do like
Because okay, there was another one also. Like this one is very famous. Joseph, God came to, or an angel came to Joseph in a dream, telling him about his son.
yeah,
So
like those
yeah,
like,
so
all
those
those
are,
rapture dreams that people
I-
have like how
like
do you know?
current people or like
I'm
biblical
both.
people.
That's where
Either.
my worry just lies a little bit, because when we get very technical about where or who's being talked to and what dream, it kind of puts like a level of like where we stand.
Yeah.
Like it makes the prophets seem like they're higher, or that we can't reach that same relationship or that level with God, where it's like I feel like we can. Maybe not every dream that I have it has to be from God, but like
Oh,
some
yeah.
dreams can put me in the right path.
Yeah.
I feel like from another perspective though, if it's from God, you'll know.
Yes. 100%.
It
Because
like
the peace
like-
which surpasses all understanding, right? Like that's your verse.
Mhm.
If there's not peace with something that is coming from God, then it's not from God.
Yeah.
And that's period. Like if you have any anxiety about a decision that you are making, just know that might not be from God. And so then what do I do from there? Then you go back to the church and you say like, okay, God, like the thing is, when we ask God for guidance, we have to be willing to submit to his will, whether it's something that we like or not, whether his will is in the direction that we want to go down. It's not up to us. It's all God's will. God has a plan for each and every one of us. And so it's up to us to really like lean into that and actually submit to his will. And what does submission mean? Relinquishing all control, all anxiety, all cast your worries on the Lord, right? Like, and he will sustain you. That's that in and of itself. Is that one of your verses?
No, I had Matthew 6:27 that it doesn't add a single moment.
Yeah.
Worrying.
What does it add to your life?
Yeah, I like those verses.
Yeah.
They're so reassuring.
They are.
Like no matter how stressed you are, it's just like, why am I stressing at the end of the day? Like I like
and there's so many. There's so many.
it's
It's like
it
there-
just shows how like I don't want to say prepared, but prepared the Bible is.
No, it shows exactly. It shows. I was literally about to say something. I was about to say like it shows how well made the Bible is for us and how like perfect it came together to guide us. And
it wasn't
God
just
literally gave
written.
us a book.
I
and
was
it's
about to
here,
say that. Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
right before this, I was preparing. If the attorney that I work for is watching this, I was not doing this during work. But I was preparing for this podcast and I was like, all you have to do is literally search up Bible verse about how I feel about this. Bible verse about this. And it's like, that's crazy that this was written so long ago and it literally has every single thing that you need. And it's like when did you have the time, and like where did all these like thoughts like come to play in like one book?
And it's like perfect too, like everything.
Yeah. I know it was written by people that were sent by God. So so these people, I thought you were telling me to like what this was. I was like, what?
Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's written by these people, and they're people just like us. So God sent them, but they're people just like us, so they know what we're going through. So they wrote everything that they were feeling.
And that's not me saying like, oh, you can't have a dream from God. No, you're not that close. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, just be very careful on what you discern is from God and what's not from God.
Yeah.
Things that we see on social media, like, wow, this perfectly relates to what I'm going through, right? There's an algorithm on social media, on all platforms of social media, that will cater directly to what you're going through. Our phones listen to what we're talking about, right? And so that, it's, you know,
guys, let me know if you hear about this later.
Exactly.
I was about to say, you ever talk about something like, I'd say like, I don't know, brand of makeup, and then you're just scrolling and then it pops up. So
like, what are the odds?
Right. There are no odds. Nothing is coincidental. It's
they listen.
My bad.
So as we're coming to an end, Rachel, do you have any resources that you could give to people who are struggling?
Yeah. So the number one resource that I would highly recommend, Christian or not, is 988. It's the National Suicide Hotline. It's free. It's 24/7. You can text it. You can call it. It's hashtag # 988. So you just dial that and somebody will pick up, and they can also help you find local resources. If you're looking for a counselor, you can go to psychology.com. I would really try to steer away from like betterhelp.com and things like that, because they're not really as effective as trying to find like a local person. And you can, on psychology.com, you can actually filter your search through, like, you can find a Christian counselor, you can filter it through your insurance, and you can filter it through male, female, like, so it's just different things like anxiety, depression, whatever you're actually dealing with. And then if you have any questions, you're all more than welcome to reach out to me via email. I think you said that you can leave it.
I'll put everything in the description, guys.
So yeah, like, send me an email. And if you have any questions, if you need help finding a counselor, I would be more than glad to help you. If you're looking for a counselor, like, I can be that for you. If you want, this is not my advertising. I'm
Promoting
sorry.
right now.
Promoting. No,
She's amazing.
no, like, but not at all. Seriously, like, if you need help, please, like, reach out. Coptic or not, if you're watching this, like, I can help you find somebody that can help you with whatever it is that you're going through, even if it's a local priest or church or whatever.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for Ellie and Rachel for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We're on all social medias. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. And everything that Rachel mentioned will be in the description.
We are CTP. Have a blessed day.